Hare Krishna. Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopijana Pallabha Girivara Radhe Gopijana Pallabha Girivara Radhe Jashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Kunja Vihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Madhava Kunja Vihari Jayom Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivijagacharya Astatara Satasi Simadhis Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Gora Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Let's go to Krishna as quickly as possible. We're reading this morning same Canto 10, Chapter 35, Text 9, and Text 9 is referenced very, very beautifully in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. So you won't be able to look on your handheld device, you just have to listen. Brihad Bhagavatamrita 3.7.112. Sanatana Goswami writes, the trees and creepers in the forest respond to the sound of Krishna's flute by becoming so luxuriant with fruits and flowers that they seem to be manifesting Lord Vishnu within their hearts. As the branches bend low with the weight, the filaments on their trunks and vines stand erect in the ecstasy of love of God. And both the trees and the creepers pour down a rain of sweet sap. And the commentary, it's a long one. Greater than the clouds and rivers are the forest plants, who are sentient beings. Another of the Gopis recite this verse, one that's cited above, text 9 of chapter 35, in praise of the trees and creepers of Vrindavan. Now, it's something that one of the commentaries, I believe it's Jiva Goswami, says, this whole chapter is a collection of, sometimes the Gopis would speak like this, and at other times they would, so it's a collection, it's presented as a run-on set of expressions, but it's a collection of different expressions at different times by different Gopis. That's his explanation. So the trees and creepers of Vrindavan have the great fortune to associate with Krishna during the day. The Gopis, by singing these verses to remind themselves of how Krishna is enjoying in the forest, achieve some solace from the pain of being separated from him. Paragraph. In the previous verse, text 8, the Gopis sang of Krishna playing his flute to call the cows. Venu na avayati ka sa yadahi. Thus, the sound of the trees and creepers are responding to the sound of Krishna's flute. The flute song directly addresses the cows, not the trees and creepers. Yet, the trees and creepers of Vrindavan and the other forests of Vrindavan, of Vraja, react in ecstasy, pouring down a continuous flow of sap. It seems that they behold the Supreme Personality of Godhead everywhere, inside their hearts and outside. And though the all-pervasive Supreme Lord Vishnu appears in numerous forms, they see him in the one form, who submits himself to the control of pure devotion, namely Sri Nanda Kishore. Paragraph. The creepers try to hide. The creepers try to hide that they are seeing him. No, off. It's rattling. What's the rattling? Now it stopped. No, it's okay. Excuse me. We'll go back. The creepers try to hide that they are seeing him, as one might try to hide that one is seeing a rare and secret treasure. But their ecstatic love confounds their attempts unwittingly. They let everyone see that Krishna is manifest in their hearts. The symptoms of Krishna's inner presence are obvious. Namely, the creepers are outwardly rich with an endless supply of fruits and flowers, and their branches bend low, not only from the weight of those fruits and flowers, but also from an inner mood of humility, which shows a deep wealth of good qualities derived from piety and spiritual knowledge. Moreover, the gross and subtle bodies of the creepers show signs of transcendental ecstasy, evidence that the creepers possess the deepest inner wealth of pure devotion. The creepers, and also their husbands, the trees, are fully endowed with these symptoms of external and internal wealth. The Gopis mentioned the creepers before the trees because the creepers are women like themselves. Isn't this nice? Paragraph. The creepers and trees. This is Sanatana Goswami giving us a guided tour of Vrindavan. These creepers and trees very much resemble Krishna's devotees, who are rich with the fruits of beauty, aristocracy, wealth, and influence, and with the flowers of children and other family members. Krishna's devotees are rich with the flower-like Vedas, which offer lush promises of rewards. They're richly steeped in study of the Vedas and performance of Vedic sacrifices, and are also rich with the fruits of enjoyment in this life and the next. Nonetheless, these devotees remain always bowed down in humility, shyness, and other saintly qualities, and their family members, Vitapa, show these qualities as well. Paragraph. It's like you can make a painting of all of this in mental image. The devotees of the Lord try to keep Sri Vishnu hidden in their hearts, like a housewife who tries to conceal her extramarital affair, but the Lord so thoroughly pervades the inner and outer workings of all the senses of his devotees that the devotees cannot keep him from openly shining forth, especially when they hear the song of Krishna's flute. Their intensified love expresses itself in their bodies as horripilation on their limbs, and they shed torrents of ecstatic tears and show other signs of joy, as indicated in this verse by the words Vigyan Jayantya Iva, or as if exhibiting. Vaishnavas naturally want to to respect the sanctity of their prema by not showing it to anyone and everyone. Prema should not be allowed to grade into a cheap public spectacle. But when symptoms of increased ecstasy appear on their bodies, Vaishnavas sometimes cannot completely conceal their inner feelings. Paragraph. The songs like this one that the gopis sing in the 35th chapter of the 10th canto differ from their complaints of separation from Krishna cited earlier from previous chapters. Before, the gopis mostly lamented their bad fortune, but now they are seriously trying to raise themselves above the misery by being separated from Krishna during the day. By singing these songs, they actually feel great joy, as Shukadeva Goswami states at the end of the chapter. That's text 26 is the end of this chapter. O king, during the daytime the women of Vrindavan thus took pleasure in continuously singing about the pastimes of Krishna, and the minds and hearts of those women absorbed in him were filled with great festivity, unquote. Although the women intensely felt the pain of separation from Krishna, by singing about his pastimes, they were able to keep their minds fixed on him, and so they were happy even during the day. Continuing, at the beginning of chapter 35, the first text, Srila Shukadev also said, quote, when Krishna went to the forest, the minds of the gopis would run after him, and thus the young girls, although saddened, spent their days singing of his pastimes, unquote. This statement can be understood to mean that even though being apart from Krishna made the gopis sad, they managed to pass the days happily, ninyuhu, by singing about his pastimes. Paragraph. According to the explanation given by Srila HH Swami, the gopis praising the creepers and trees of Vrindavan meant to say, quote, if even the plant life has such deep love for Krishna, how can we be expected to tolerate being separated from him? Unquote. All the same, by singing the glories of Krishna, whose transcendental body is the essence of all bliss, the gopis feel great pleasure. Their songs are not pitiful lamentations, but the highest revelations of ecstatic love. Or, if one prefers to see the negative side of love and separation, the word mahodaya, or festivity, can be understood to be used ironically to indicate just the opposite of what it literally means, that is to say, because the hearts of the gopis burn incessantly in the fire of prema, they never enjoy a moment's happiness. And that was all text 1. Now we're ready for text 2. Chapter 35. So we're all the way to page number 10 out of 153. Text 2 and 3, they're combined, because it said that this chapter is in pairs. The gopis said, when Mukunda vibrates the flute he has placed to his lips, stopping its holes with his tender fingers, he rests his left cheek on his left arm and makes his eyebrows dance. At that time, the demigoddesses traveling in the sky with their husbands, the siddhas, become amazed. As those ladies listen, they are embarrassed to find that their minds yielding to the pursuit of lusty desires, and in their distress, they are unaware that the belts of their garments are loosening. Purport. Srila Jiva Goswami states that this chapter consists of a collection of statements the gopis made at various times as they stood in small groups here and there in Vrindavan. So that's the BBT purport. Here's Vishwanath. When Krishna herding his cows in Vrindavan, played his flute to announce his coming to the trees, creepers, birds, and beasts, suffering in separation. The Gopis, whose love increased on hearing that sound, spoke to their friends in 12 pairs of verses. Paragraph. Krishna rested his left cheek on the base of his left arm in order to play gamakas, or vibrato, in ascending and descending modes of the ragas, really detailed. At that time, he placed his left shank, that's his upper leg, over his right shank, that's his upper leg, and assumed a threefold bending form, which enchanted the three worlds while tilting his neck. His eyebrows danced to attract the attention of Subal and others to the skillfulness of his songs. Like, check it out, with his eyebrows. The flute was placed on the lower lip. What type of flute was it? It was equipped with 7 holes, which were covered by his fingers, which were softer than those of others, because of not doing very heavy labor, and somewhat harder than his other limbs. Paragraph. The wives of the Siddhas flying in the sky, although accompanied by their husbands, on hearing the sound of the flute became astonished. We have never heard such enchanting flute playing before. It was astonishing because it enchants us who are chaste women, and moreover, it enchants our husbands who have given up their identity as males and become female, unquote. That was the first cause of astonishment. Paragraph. The women, being with their husbands, became embarrassed, thinking, our husbands, seeing our agitation, will have doubts about us. The husbands, on the other hand, became embarrassed, thinking, oh, having given up our male identity and adopted female identities, our wives will have doubts about us. Paragraph. Though together with their husbands, they offered themselves to the arrows of lust. Seeing the arrow of love for Krishna approaching quickly, the wives said, "Oh, arrows of love for Krishna, pierce these hearts quickly, which have been offered to you. Let us give up our faithfulness to our husbands and let Krishna enjoy with us." Paragraph. The husband said, "As we have given up our male and devata identities, immediately make us into gopis and enjoy with us." Paragraph. Then the women, along with their husbands, so afflicted by the arrows of lust, became stunned. Kashmalam. The same feelings appeared in both parties at once. Therefore, the women's belts became loosened without their knowledge, and the men's clothes and hair became loose without their knowledge. Last paragraph. If the devatas reach such a state, what can be said of humans? And what can be said of gopis? And what can be said of those who live with Krishna in the same village? And what can be said of those who attained his direct association? How can one live without him? Even while our husbands and children watch and scold us, let us enter the forest of Vrindavan and enjoy with our beloved, unquote. This is the implication of the end of each pair of verses. Well, this is pretty elevated conversation here. We'll continue tomorrow, this big section, each of the commentaries. We hear about Radharani's Mahabhava, that her mad talks with the bumblebee. Specifically, that term is used when she speaks to the bumblebee. And the Gopis take after Radharani. Their attachment for Krishna knows no constraints. They have their rational faculties operating, and they're fully absorbed in the internal potency. We have our Bhagavad Gita message describing the Mahatma. We all know the verse, Mahatmanas tamam partha daivim prakritim ashrita. Ashrita, they've taken, the Mahatmas have taken shelter of the daivim prakritim, or the internal potency. That's a Mahatma. And so there's the practicing stage where one may be rightly eligible to be considered a Mahatma. Now, in the world today, the word Mahatma is used in a very liberal and even incorrect way, but the absorption in the internal potency is the standard for the great souls. And when the absorption in the internal potency is achieved, then there's degrees, like the language of nectar devotion is perfect, more perfect, most perfect. So we will be mistaken, and maybe even offensive, to say comparative and superlative, this one's better than that one. We have to be very careful doing things like that. The highest standard of love, we know from the teachings of the Goswamis and the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the teachings of the Bhagavatam, confirm that the love of the gopis is the highest. It says superlative. But it doesn't diminish perfect. It's just they're super excellent. And therefore, they're revered in a special way. As we're doing with these earlier chapters, the reverence, the revering of Yasoda and Nanda in their parental affection. And it's the glorification spans several chapters. Of course, this is the childhood pastimes of Krishna, the earlier chapters. And therefore, he's delighting the hearts of those with Vatsalya Rasa. And it's not just Mother Yasoda and Nanda Maharaj. It's all the elders have that very special, intense kind of love. That doesn't exist in Vaikuntha. There's no motherly affection towards Narayan. I was having some exchange with somebody yesterday. There's no childhood pastime of Lord Narayan. There is childhood pastime of Krishna. And it is to be understood as a pastime. Going down a bit from where we are, reading the 10th canto, the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita teaches that we're to understand Krishna's divyam, the divine or the transcendental nature of his appearance and his activities. So in his appearance, in his activities, Prabhupada would make this reference. I was just listening this morning, actually. In British law, the king can do no wrong. We've heard that from him before. I didn't know it before he said it. Even if he does something bad, the king is not to be considered bad or held accountable for some crime. Now, what goes on in private arrangements is another thing. But not only Krishna can do no wrong, although people criticize Krishna for things, his inducing Arjuna to fight, and his inducing Yudhisthira to lie, and so forth and so on. When it seems like it's what Arjuna wanted to do was the moral thing, and Krishna flipped him around to do something that wasn't moral. He gave really good moral reasons, and Krishna turned him around. So there are commentators that speak like that. And so they're not understanding the transcendental nature of Krishna's activities, nor the understanding that the transcendental nature of that which is beyond material nature. But Daivim Prakritim is beyond material nature. It's an internal potency. So how are we to access that internal potency instead of the other one, the illusory potency? And significant how-to is doing what we're doing, that is hearing messages about transcendence, so that therefore we can understand transcendence. That is purification free from the misconceptions and some clarity on what transcendence means. It's beyond the modes of nature, beyond the laws of karma. It's beyond the worldly morality. It's beyond anything that any of the measuring sticks of people in knowledge, or people that are in goodness, because people that are in goodness generally have knowledge of some kind. And that knowledge of some kind has some right and wrong, and some good and bad, and all of that kind of thing. But Krishna's position is different. So we're coming down from this very elevated 10th canto to make sure we're looking at what we're hearing with the proper lens. We're getting a glimpse of transcendence. But what does transcendence mean? Beyond the modes of nature, beyond karma, beyond anything that's of the material dimension. That's Krishna's nature. So that's Bhagavad Gita. That's Krishna's nature. That's his position. And then when we hear the name, form, qualities, and pastimes, it's such a nice description of standing in his threefold bending form, enchanting the three worlds. And the sound of his flute, and the effect of the sound of his flute on the different residents of Vrindavan, including the inanimate, this question of Shanta Rati yesterday, the clouds in the sky and the rocks in the rivers. Now they're conscious. There's chit, or consciousness, within them, but their position of service is one of neutrality. They're just providing the ground for Krishna to do what he does. And then there's more active. Even the trees and creepers have a more active role, although they're non-moving living entities. And then it keeps going through the hierarchy as these verses go along, leading up to what to speak then of the highest kind of Daivim Prakritim manifest by the Gopis. What to speak of them, what's going on inside them consciousness-wise, the reciprocation of Krishna with them consciousness-wise. They're seeing Lord Vishnu within the hearts of all the trees and creepers. Now, it doesn't mean that they're literally seeing with their material eyes, there's Paramatma, and oh, there's Paramatma, and oh, there's Paramatma. Not like that. But the presence of the Supersoul making their lives luxuriant at the same time with complete humility. And flowers, fruits, sap, abundantly, just as Krishna's passing, playing his flute. So they're seeing all those things. That's the Daivim Prakritim capacity that they have. But then it goes on and on and on. So it's not imagination, it's Daivim Prakritim. It's what let's say what yogis do. And come down a little bit. What people today, common, trendy for people today is meditation, yoga, and meditation. It's imitation yoga and imitation meditation, but it's people do because they feel something. And it's something that feels good, and so they do because it feels good. Now, the rest of their lifestyle, who can say? But it's not the mode of goodness lifestyle largely. What to speak of transcendental lifestyle? But the yogis, when they become mature yogis, they're like this discussion from yesterday evening. But there's a kind of detachment from the grosser forms as it becomes more proficient or more absorbed, detachment from grosser forms of sense enjoyment and grosser forms of fruitive activity, and a happiness that's within, and so forth. But so that's moving towards the internal potency. Now, they don't really have an idea of what internal potency, what to speak of the potent of the internal potency, and what they're doing, and so forth. So therefore, it's quite fuzzy. But what to speak of, the opportunity that's been given to us, with distractions in our mind, because we're conditioned souls, but to become absorbed in the sound of the Mahamantra meditation and knowing the details of who is Krishna, not just, it feels good, I feel more relaxed and more peaceful and so forth. But we're being given a greater access to the internal potency, Daivim Prakritim. And then progressing through the stages of sadhana practice. That's somehow mercy that's been given to all of us. And then continue in hearing the messages of the Bhagavatam of perfected souls like COMMENT, Dhruva, and Prahlad, and then on, and then further description. Very, very fortunate. Just a little sound vibration about our modern circumstance. One devotee who you may or may not know, one of the co-presidents of the Atlanta Temple named Vedasar, took a group of students to Rishikesh, like on a pilgrimage to different places, and Indradumna Maharaj was there at the same time with his team, and his team included Madhava and Badahari and the cooks, and they had festival there for 2 weeks or something like that, maybe more. And at the end of the day, kirtan and feeding people, free prasadam, and it was, they were having a good time. The people were having a good time being introduced to chanting. And then he left, and as he left, this lockdown happened. he got out with his group, but Vedasar and his group didn't get out. They were planning to stay a little extra, and they were whatever the right word is, they were locked down in Rishikesh for over a month. So he just sent me some photos of kirtan, something like ranging between 50 and 80, all over the world, largely Europeans, but from all over the world, young people having, lockdown kirtan in Rishikesh every morning, every evening, and then classes, and the eagerness. This is just people being introduced. The Mahatmanasta Mahaprata, Daivim Prakritim Ashata, knowing nothing about nothing, having some whatever spiritual or pseudo-spiritual or whatever misguided kind of notion about spirituality. That's why they're there in Rishikesh. And eager. So that's the internal potency, and then here we are, and then there's the Brijbasis. And there's our acharyas that are also connected like that. And the 6 Goswamis of the Goswami Astaka, that description that they are just absorbed in the mood of the gopis. Although they weren't gopis, they were sadhus, followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but their internal mood, who can say what their internal mood was? Well, we're getting some idea of their internal mood by reading their commentary. And just, that's where this process, this internal potency process, is taking us. And, we certainly don't want to call ourselves Mahatmas, but the process is to transform us into such beings. And with humility, we're not going to claim, hey, I'm a Mahatma. But the process is very merciful. And so at least what's our aspiration? To be connected with Krishna through the mercy of our disciplic succession and the great souls that are disclosing to us who is Krishna, reminding us of what we've forgotten, and being drawn very naturally through their association to this very, very special kind of life where Krishna is at the center and mindful of Krishna all the time, drawing us to that place, higher consciousness. Very special process. And the method to reach there is very sublime. It's very nice, hearing these descriptions. Much better than reading the news. Which people spend a fair amount of time, probably regularly, to keep themselves abreast with, what the latest disaster in the world, and the conflicts, and heading towards war here and there, and okay, so let's see if there's some discussion.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you so much for the class. Maharaj, I was wondering, listening to these beautiful descriptions of Braja, and how the trees, leaving, the gopis, the trees, the creepers, everybody is so ecstatic.
And the cows.
The cows, and even the demigods and everybody.
And the clouds.
Yeah, I mean, it's everybody.
Acting like an umbrella to shade Krishna from the sun.
Yeah. So what could have behooved us, jivas, to want to be separate from Krishna? And
It's quite irrational, isn't it?
I mean,
You won't find a good reason. There's no good reason.
and even now, I guess, I mean,
It's misuse of free will, but there's no good. It's not. It doesn't. It's not. It's not smart. It's really dumb. But is the potential is within the soul, and that potential was exercised with no good reason. So don't look for a good reason, because there isn't one. Don't look for water in a desert. There's no good reason. It's of the soul. One of the things. This is like one of the ways to describe that which is irrational. Commonly, we're looking for something outside of ourselves as the cause, and then this is the effect. But there isn't some prompt from the outside that's the cause, and then we made a dumb decision. It's something that's of the soul. There's a free will switch. No, what made us flip the switch? Because like something outside. It's just misuse of free will. There's no other explanation that I'm aware of that says, yeah, that's the reason. I mean, you can say Icha Dvesha Samutena, but why did that come? That moves over that side. So here we are.
one more just a comment. The Rishikesh lockdown. I mean, that sounds such a wonderful thing to happen when you're forced into a retreat like that and you're completely able to absorb and to.
Well, the students, there were Georgia Tech students with him, grad students, and they couldn't go back. They were locked down too. There's nothing. And then when maybe they would run out of money, but what happened was, this is what I understood, that the people that were assembled, because they were also locked down, they had some resource, and they helped maintain the temple, so the temple wouldn't have the ISKCON center in Rishikesh wouldn't be in difficulty. So all it takes is one, it takes bhakti, and bhakti awakens bhakti. And so there's some adversity, and bhakti awakens bhakti. That's the mindfulness of one who's carrying bhakti. That wasn't pleasant. This is a family man. He has a wife and a child, and he, I don't know what Daddy, when are you coming back? I don't know. Didn't ask. I can only imagine. Okay.
Krishna Guru Maharaj, it's very wonderful and very sweet to hear these pastimes. I don't want to ask my question and bring it to a different platform. But as you were just mentioning this, the cause is within us and not outside. This prompted me, the description of the trees' humility that we were hearing, trees and creepers. They're always humble. I have been realizing this. It's easier to be in that humble mode of service with some devotees, whereas with others it's not easy. It just some kind of trigger happens. So as you were mentioning this, it's not the cause outside. Just would like to hear from you, Guru.
Well, we're conditioned souls. Once you make that choice, you're under the external energy. And we're conditioned by the external energy. And we're continuing to make choices. There's never a moment where living entities lose their free will. That means we're making choices all the time. including those which trigger us. Because we can choose, this is, this react versus respond. We don't have to. Something may get triggered, but you don't have to go there. And why is it there? Because we're conditioned. Because of this, primordial misuse of free will. Now we're on this treadmill that doesn't stop. So we have to make a 100% firm other choice. We can make a 30% or 10% or whatever.
These qualities are not like the qualities of the material people.
Which ones?
I mean, the humble mode of service, being able to, in that mode of service sometimes and not there the other time. We hear
that's spiritual. Material is sometimes, and spiritual is never sometimes. Time is eternal. Time destroys things. And where there's no influence of time, time doesn't destroy things. No such influence.
I was just thinking in terms of this Yasyasti Bhaktir Bhagavatya Kinchana verse, where we say the devotees' qualities versus even the material people, even though they may seem to have good qualities, but that's just on the mental platform.
Yeah.
So I was just trying to understand my ability or being able to be in that mode of service sometimes and not the other times.
It's the same question. It's the same. Your topic is the same topic, and the response is the same response. That's just conditioning. And we're conditioned by the external energy, which moves by modes of nature and karma, and then then subsets of those things. And that's the price we have to pay for our misuse of free will, rebellious spirit. Icha dvesha samutena. We're paying the price for that. We're accountable for our mistakes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I mean, the pastimes that we are hearing, I mean, they're the Krishna's pastimes like a big mystery. When Krishna left Vrindavan to Dwaraka and Mathura and Dwaraka, the Vrajavasis did not go with him. Right? We don't know. I mean, I don't know why. But then the kind of Vipralamba, the separation from Krishna is like a big. It is a much higher stage compared to enjoying with directly in presence of Krishna. I mean, that's what we hear. Is that the reason? Is that the same Vipralamba exists in the spiritual world as well?
Yeah. Oh yeah. When Krishna goes out to herd the cows, how do the Gopas and the elders feel? How do they feel separation? And when Krishna goes back to have his meal, how do the Gopas and the cows feel? Separation. It's in the spiritual world.
I was just trying to remember the Narada Muni pastime visiting Dwaraka, all the queen's palaces. She is present everywhere at the same time.
Yes.
So, in this case, I mean, he's not doing that, he's doing it like a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. He's quite flexible. Yeah.
So, in our case, I mean, when we have like some kind of suffering, it is like
some kind of property?
Suffering. I mean,
suffering.
Yeah. I say I don't want that. I mean.
Oh no, we don't like suffering.
So, I mean, it's easy to maybe a little bit more dependent on Krishna at that time. And also when there is too good also, it may be slightly easier to, remember Krishna because it's very difficult to remember. I mean, it's very difficult to understand too much good is there in our life because it's temporary also. So, but when things are going like a simple sine curve without so much like spikes. It may be, it is okay to, it will, even the spiritual path is also goes like same way. It's not.
But their response is different. The condition of heart is different. It's not that I don't want that, I want this. They want to be with Krishna, but they're with Krishna because their absorption in remembering him. So they're feeling bliss, although they're feeling sad. It's like, it's not the same for us because of their absorption in Krishna. It's not the same. Okay? Don't try to go there with your mind, because you won't be able to enter that way. It's purification and acceptance of that principle and further purification. And then, little by little, one can start to understand. It's like it's another experience than what I'm familiar with and the people around me are familiar with. That's part of the mystery and the adventure. You just keep proceeding with sincerity and faith. Okay?
This is from Prakash Govindan Prabhu from Singapore.
Yeah.
Guru Maharaj, most perfect is the Gopis' love for Krishna. What is perfect and more perfect? Is perfect and more perfect love for Krishna in different rasa, or love for the other forms of Krishna like Lord Ram, Narayan, etc.?
It's in the first part of Brihat Bhagavatamrita, it's a quest theme where Narada is searching for the greatest recipient of the Lord's mercy. And he goes from person to person, each one saying, no, so-and-so is the greatest recipient. He goes to that person, you're the greatest recipient. They go, no, here's someone that's the greatest recipient. So like that. Sanatana Goswami says they're all perfect. So it's not just rasa or forms of the Lord. It's the degree of bhakti. So that where it starts is when Brahmana, who is worshipping his Shalagram Shila by the side of the Shashvameda god. And he's really into it. And Narada goes, wow, you're the greatest recipient. No. So perfect isn't necessarily rasa or forms of the Lord. It's where there's selfless love. And then there's more perfect, most perfect.
This is from Sucharita Mataji. In days where the sadhana is not good, it feels like there is a need for reset or restart. Guru Maharaj, anything that can really help to reset?
Wait, no. You can't turn the clock back. You just pause and, okay, I didn't do my sadhana so well. And you acknowledge it. And now I want to go forward for the rest of my day and tomorrow and so forth. So it's a rededication to the principle of taking shelter of Krishna, wholly and solely.
This is from Visalaksha Prabhu. What is the difference between the determination and the faith in relation to the bhakti process while putting efforts to follow the instructions of spiritual master?
There's no difference. One is a receiving and the other is acting, but it's a pair or combination that aren't really separate. Okay? Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.